All right, everybody. I'm here with one of my one-on-one fitness and nutrition clients, Mike. Mike, I'd love if you could just introduce yourself. Just give us a quick backstory, who you are, what you do, your family. Just a
Sure.
general backstory.
Sure. I'm Mike. I'm a native of St. Louis, 49 years old, married, got fraternal twins that are 15 and a son that's 11. I'm a CFO of a pretty large mineral and mining business. One of six, so a big family. I'm out of the Midwest. Like to golf. Um, Coming into this, that was pretty much the extent of my activity, leading
Sure.
into kind of reaching out to Jeremy. That's just a little bit about me, and I'm sure you'll get to know me a little bit more as we go through some of the
Yeah.
things Jeremy wants to talk about.
Yeah. I want to ask some questions about before you had started, but really just coming out. You and I, Mike, we've been together, working together for it's been about 7 months. We started back
Yep.
in the middle of the year, and here we are at the beginning of the next year. And over that course of time, you're down over 30 pounds within that
Right.
time frame. And
Correct.
I'd love to just rewind back to when you and I originally did connect before we started working together. What were some of the biggest challenges and the biggest hurdles that you had when trying to get in shape and lose some of that weight on your own?
Yeah. First off, 30 pounds of weight loss is about 5 pounds more than I was maybe targeting when I first
Yeah,
got to you. So goal achieved, check mark.
absolutely.
At that time I'll just say I was, a little over 180 pounds, and, I'm 5'8". For those of you that are watching this, you kind of do that math. That's a pretty good level of weight. Certainly if you're not one that's got built on a bunch of muscle, which I'm not. Um, what was some of the struggles I had is, I'm a busy professional. I know those are excuses. I got into the habits a few years prior to where it was all about jumping on a Peloton bike only, counting my calories, doing the good old My Fitness apps and things like that, which it did work for a period of time, but then I went through a bit of a health issue, nothing severe, but a health issue that kind of got me off that a bit, and it was very hard to get back to it. Fast forward to, beginning of this past year, I guess, and it was the highest weight I'd ever been. Didn't really like what I saw when I was on calls like this. Didn't like what I saw, just in the mirror every morning and things like that. And then on top of it, I'm almost 50, so there are some things that were coming up that, whether genetic or otherwise, that nothing severe, but if I don't do anything about it now when I'm 60 or 70, could be something that I regret. And I said to myself, this is not the way I want to be. I don't want to look this way. I don't want to feel this way. I want to be able to run around with my grandchildren, whenever my kids, no time sooner, no time soon, but
Yeah.
whenever they are. I have fortunate, my father's, 78 and still very active, play tennis 5, 6 days a week, and he runs around with my kids all the time. So I don't want to miss that out on that. So I just kind of said, I think it's time to get back into it. And I needed the right type of coach to do that. And, I had a former colleague of mine that went through a similar thing and saw a lot of success. So when you have a referral like that, you finally pick up the phone. So that's what kind of led me to it. Yeah.
What do you think it was about the 6 months that we've been together that moved the needle for you that maybe were different than things that you've tried in the past, different than logging your food or, hopping on Pelotons or doing some of the
Well,
things that you had tried before?
I, I hesitate to say this because I know it's not going to be the same for everybody, but it isn't that hard. Like, I just didn't find, from day one, I didn't feel like what you were asking of me was like, oh my gosh, that is just so much for me to change day one, right? And if I look back at what I was doing, what I'm doing now to what I was doing before, it still isn't overly hard for me. Now, granted, I have a sweet tooth at times, and if there's
Yep.
anything that's a little bit hard, is avoiding that little bit of a sweet tooth, or, granted, or you just allow yourself to have a little bit.
Yep.
But, when the way that you're able to work with me around parameters such as, hey, I'm not the one that cooks a lot in my
Yep.
house,
Yep.
and thus I'm not going to take what I need to do for myself and impact what I ask my wife to do for dinners. So don't
Yep.
touch my dinners,
Yep.
right? And so to kind of find ways that focus on things that I can truly control without having it become an effort that everybody else has to be impacted by was critically important. And I figured that out very quickly. I mean, I really liked the way that, you know, the first time you had me take pictures of what I was eating for 5 days, yeah, I was a little reluctant to get the answers back, but the answers
Yep.
came back kind of like, keep doing that, maybe tweak this, keep doing that. We're not going to touch that. I mean, it was like, okay. Now, granted, I get it. Not everybody's going to have the same that, but you know, now granted, when I did that, I had already changed some of what I was eating. I wasn't going out and having cheeseburgers, fries, and what
Yep.
I mean, because I knew that wasn't going to fly anyway, right? So, but that was probably the biggest kind of thing that I kind of take that it hasn't. I don't want to make it sound like it's not hard,
Yep.
but it doesn't have to be as hard as people generally make it out to be. And I think that's generally why people don't even start because
Yep.
they generally think you got to change everything. You got to impact everybody around you. And you got to give up going out and having a drink with friends. You got to give up having a cookie at the end of the day. Like the answer to that is no, right? The
Yep.
reality is if you just, for me, it was eating more protein, cutting out fried foods and some sweets, a lot of carbs, and working out. Um, and the reality is the workouts you gave weren't overly, it's not like it was like, putting me to the brink. It was gradual and it built me up. So, you know, uh, I think if you just get over the hurdle of thinking that you can do it without it feeling like, gosh, this is going to be such a huge change, I'm not willing to do it. It doesn't require that if you do it at the right pace.
And one of the things that I talk about openly and freely and with people that are clients or not clients is I don't require my clients to log their food in any way, shape, or form. You've never had to download my fitness pal with me, weigh out your food, send me over how many grams you're eating. Were you surprised that you were still able to see the 30 pounds in the 6 months without having to go through some of those traditional avenues of logging food, of going and being on a restricted diet or going hungry all the time?
I don't know if I'd call it surprise. I think it was more, I was just, it you're able to get to the same result by focusing on less criteria. I
Yeah.
mean, those apps generally you're counting calories, they're telling you to count your carbs and then your proteins. For you, it was like get your protein, get the protein. I don't care about obviously naturally you're not going to eat fried food. Like you're just not going to eat things that you generally know are unhealthy. But if it's about eating healthier foods and getting a lot more protein, I mean, you kind of go back to kind of the Mediterranean diet of X amount of veggies and then a protein and a little bit of carbs. Like, unfortunately, us in America, we've generally grown up where the picture of that plate is not what you actually get when you go out to eat. And you got to just think about it. So I don't think it was overly. I don't know if I'd call it surprise. I think I was, if anything, I've been a little bit surprised at how simple you made it.
Sure.
Like you just boiled it down to three or four concepts, week
Yep.
in, week out, or how what I focus on eating, which I think also made it easier when I traveled, quite honestly, right? Because I do travel a bit, and throughout the course of this, I had to travel for work, whether it was a short trip or a long, 10+ day vacation my wife and I took for an anniversary to
Yep.
Italy, where, gosh, if there's ever a place that you're going to go that's going to be a lot of carbs with pasta and pizza,
Yeah.
like, it just came down to simple things like have the same thing in the morning, have some eggs and some yogurt, you
Yep.
know, bring some jerky sticks, which I did, have those for some snacks or a protein bar here or there. And yeah, if you want to have a bowl of pasta, which granted, when you're in Italy, it's not like you're having a plate of pasta like you're getting
Yeah.
from a
Yep.
pasta house, you're getting little things. So I think that's really where it came down to. It's just
Yep.
you made it, you boiled it down to, I think, simple things that weren't overly scientific,
Yep.
weren't overly analyzed.
And that's such a great point, and that's what we found for you is we've really found the minimal effective dose of saying, okay, if you have to put time and effort into something, this is where you're going to get the best
Yeah.
return. And once we can find those things, you're right, it comes down to 3, 4 concepts over the course of 6 months, and as long as we can start understanding those and getting resources for those, it definitely doesn't have to be overly complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the other thing is I'm not to the specific question you're bringing up, but like I'm taking more ownership of what I'm putting into my body, even
Yeah,
including meals that typically historically my wife may have been responsible for with dinner. I'm doing some meal prepping, maybe not every week, but maybe every other week I'm doing some form of meal prep that the rest of the family benefit from. So
yep,
I'm maybe my wife would say I'm pulling a little bit more of my weight a little
sure,
bit
sure.
around the house as it comes. So there are some benefits there. And on granted, on the flip side, I am a little bit more selective with what I
Yep,
eat, but not to the point where it's a problem for those
yep,
that are around me.
yep. That's good. You coming into the program, Mike, you were winding 6.5, 7 months. A lot of people, if they're watching this or they come across this, they're on the fence. They're like, should I, is this something that I should be doing? Is this going to work for me? Is it the right move? Because what I do is a little bit differently than, or is a little bit different than, your traditional workout plan or your traditional crash course diet. What would you say to someone that's in your shoes that does travel often, that is balancing career demands of a relatively stressful career, your family, that are dealing with those constraints, but know they still have 20 to 30 pounds to lose? What would you say to someone who's looking at this?
Don't hesitate, write a check and get going. Because, I mean, in my opinion, one from the referral that you had in my experience, right?
Yep,
I think it's very clear that you will tailor to what works for that individual and what parameters that individual sets. The other is um, you got to look at this as beyond an investment for 6 months. It's an investment that you're going to pay off over for me, hopefully the next 40 years or whatever it is,
absolutely.
35, 40 years, because, I certainly hope and don't expect to revert back in any way. So, yes, is it an investment of economic resources? Sure. But you do that over 6 months and you lose 30 pounds like I have. And ideally 10 years from now, I'm the same weight, but even still, maybe even stronger,
Yep.
really stronger. Then, I mean, that payback is incredibly, I mean, you're talking to a finance guy, so I'm
Yeah.
obviously throw a payback equation into
Yep.
the answer, but
Absolutely.
and quite frankly, that was part of my little bit of hesitation of, man, do I want
Yep.
to do that? And
Yep.
it took my wife saying exactly what I just said.
Yep.
It's not something you're going to get a return on. You're going to get a return on much longer than doing something for 6 weeks, 6 months,
Yep.
excuse me. So
Yep. Yep. Well, Mike, you crushed it. It's been awesome working with you. I appreciate you sharing a little bit about your story. I know the things that you have gone through over the last 6 months are going to resonate with a lot of the same people that are watching this video. So much appreciated.
thank you, Jeremy. And it's been a pleasure.